Hold on tight for the next hour. You're entering into a place, a zone called the alternative to the alternative media. It's a place, a special place where even truth seekers fear to tread.
All right, people, let's move like we've got a purpose. Affirmative.
Okay, welcome back to the Investigative Journal on this April 3rd, 2018 day on our calendar. Got a good show for you today, all about the flat earth. And I want to play a presentation. This is Greg Anthony from the Investigative Journal here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com. Before I get into this subject today, that frankly irritates a lot of people because they say, well, there's so much going on in the world. Why are you talking about this? Well, maybe that's because there is so much going on in the world, and we sometimes forget the basic things in our life, and that is, what's the shape of the place we live? Are we going to continually listen to this crazy stuff out of NASA? I was reading an article today it came out from some NASA scientists about the big bubble that will one day take over the entire universe. And they wrote a huge paper on this. If there is no universe, like they say, how do they know a big bubble will swallow it up? And they said it won't be pretty. The Earth will just be swallowed up one day into this big bubble, as will the entire universe. Boy, they're they're great science fiction writers over there at NASA, aren't they? But we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about the Jesuits erasing our flat earth, wake up to the truth. And then we've got some other things that might be of interest to you if you've never thought about this subject. But first, if you want to get involved in a great company, I'm representing a hemp company, and I want you to get involved with it because it's great for your health and wealth. There's so many great advantages of using hemp, and I'm a personal testimony to that fact because it's really helped me out in some of the problems I have with my stomach, and I feel fantastic after only a month and a half of taking it, and it's completely straightened the situation out. So I'm sure it can help you in many different ways, as it has hundreds of thousands of other people who are trying it. And hemp is legal in all 50 states, and I've found the best hemp oil that you can buy. So contact me at gregbeacon@gmail.com. That's Greg Beacon, GREGBEACON @gmail.com. Okay, and if you want to sell it, you can join this company. You can go to my website. I'll give you the directions if you email me, and you can get on as a sales associate, and no cost to get involved. They don't take any money from you, and you can start selling the product and making some money on your own. Okay, so before we get to that, there's a couple things in the news I wanted to talk about. First, a story that Leo Zagami sent me from Rome, and he's talking about the impeachment of the Pope. And it's interesting because if the Pope is the vicar of Christ, how can you impeach him? Can you impeach Christ? But last week at the Vatican, he says, an attempted impeachment of the Pope for heresy was made by a group of influential cardinals. Now, I checked the story out, and a couple of the Italian newspapers have verified it. And on Thursday of last week, he said, the group allegedly sent an emissary, a foreign cardinal, to warn the Pope about the imminent threat of impeachment he's going to face. He was urged to dismiss his public assertions on the non-existence of hell as fake news by his good friend and collaborator, left-wing journalist Eugenio Scalfari. Interesting. Okay, as I was saying before I was interrupted, this story was verified by a left-wing journalist, Eugenio Scalfari, whose sin was to use brackets for the first time in his interview with the Pope. This shocking news and the risk of impeachment for Pope Francis has been confirmed also by Antonio Socci of the Italy's leading one of the leading Catholic journalists there, and best-selling author, who's also the director on behalf of RAI, the Italian state-owned TV station there. So anyway, the Pope is facing possible impeachment, And, my take on this whole story, also it's been confirmed by the La Repubblica. My take is, they're trying to create chaos in the Catholic Church, just like they're doing in the rest of the world. And they're just setting up the one world government, the one world religion, and they have to do it by destroying everything else, really. And that's all they're doing, and both sides are working together. You won't hear this from anybody, but people on this my station, and you're just getting the straight truth about it. They are working together. The people that are wanting him impeached, those who do not want him impeached, just another chaotic situation. So then we have a caravan of migrants now coming through Mexico. This is an orchestrated effort to show that America is no longer America, and they're basically thousands of people walking through Mexico from the southern border, from Honduras and Central America, stating that they want asylum in America. Trump has threatened to bring out the National Guard in Tijuana, in San Diego, because they want to go to the state of California, which is a sanctuary state. And Mexican government now, just as of today, has stopped them in Oaxaca, Mexico, and they're all in a soccer field there. And Mexico's wondering what to do with them. So we'll keep an eye on that story for you. Okay, let's get to Jesuits Erasing Our Flat Earth. This is a presentation, and the guy does a pretty good job with it, so let's listen to what he has to say here on the Investigative Journal.
I have another amazing documentary for you guys. This one called Jesuits Erasing the Flat Earth. This video reinforces and verifies the information from the last video I did called Flat Earth, Jesuits and the Global Conspiracy. And once again, it exposes the greatest lie of all time, which is that we live on a globe Earth that is spinning through space, which is just ridiculous. This video was produced by the YouTube channel called MigMag. I will leave a link down below. And to MigMag, I would like to say thank you and much respect, brother, much respect, for producing some great videos. So without further ado, sit back and enjoy the truth, and I will see you next time. God bless.
The globe deception and Jesuit astronomy, scientism.
I'll encourage you with another MigMag special report. For 1,000 years, from roughly 500 AD to 50, the civilized world was, but not military Rome, religious. The Roman Empire had mutated from a military power into a religious one, co-opting the beliefs of Christianity and mixing them with ancient Egyptian, Greco, and Babylonian paganism. Christian doctrine that came directly from Jesus Christ and was transcribed in the Bible stated that each individual had the liberty and independence to govern their own salvation by cultivating a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. The new religious Roman Empire insinuated herself in between Christ and the believer and said if you wanted to have your soul saved, you had to rely on the priests, bishops, and cardinals of Rome. This was the worst kind of slavery because it was a slavery of disinformation. Now and again, sincere Bible-believing Christians like the Waldensians of the Alps, the Albigensians, Jerome of Prague, John Wycliffe and his Lollards, Jan Hus of Bohemia, would rebel against this Roman rule and show Christians that Vatican doctrines claiming that you needed Rome to ensure your salvation were contradicted by the Bible. As a result, the papacy strictly forbade Bibles to be placed into the hands of the common person, and only allowed Jerome's Latin Vulgate to be handled by clergy. Men like John Wycliffe painstakingly translated the Vulgates into the language of the people. For Wycliffe, it was English. English Bibles were then slowly and carefully copied and handled by Wycliffe's followers, who handed them out to and taught the people. In response, Roman authorities captured Wycliffe's followers, called Lollards, tied their Bibles around their necks, and burned them alive. It's what so-called Christian Rome did to all of her enemies, including Jerome of Prague and Jan Hus. John Fox's Book of Martyrs, originally titled Acts and Monuments, is completely filled with examples of Catholic authorities torturing and murdering Christians. And when a Lollard was burned with a Bible hanging around his neck, it was a terrible loss, because not only were Christians being burned alive, but hand-copied Bibles were irreplaceable. But in 1517, a new rebel stepped up, an Augustinian monk from Germany named Martin Luther. Luther was furious that Pope Leo X, Giovanni de' Medici, from the powerful Medici family, who helped to rule the world then and including through today, had sent their attack dogs, the Dominicans, to cheat the common people out of their money by claiming they could buy what is called an indulgence, which is basically a receipt of forgiven sin. By paying money to indulgence peddlers like Johann Tetzel, poor Christians believed that they had some of their sins forgiven. Worse, they were told that dead loved ones were in purgatory, and they could give money to these indulgence peddlers, and the Pope would then release their dead loved ones. Luther wrote 95 short paragraphs or theses, and on November 1st of 1517, All Saints' Day, posted them to the doors of All Saints Cathedral. But what was different about Martin Luther's protest and the protests of previous Christians was the movable type printing press of Johannes Gutenberg. The 95 theses were translated and replicated by the Gutenberg press and spread like wildfire. Martin Luther instantly shot to number 1 on the Vatican hit list. Remember, he was an Augustinian monk. That didn't matter. He was waking people up and freeing them from their Roman chains, and for that he needed to be stopped. He was kidnapped by his benefactor, Frederick the Wise of Saxony, and held at Wartburg Castle for several months to protect him from Vatican assassins. During that time, he translated the Bible into vernacular German, and it may have been the most important, starting with the New Testament and then later the Old Testament. But now the Gutenberg press started printing off large quantities of common language Bibles, and the fires of the Inquisition couldn't keep up. Other brave Christians, like William Tyndale, also a Roman Catholic priest, began translating Bibles into the language of their people. Tyndale was English, like Wycliffe, and he too was eventually executed by Rome for his crime. But now Rome had a problem. There were too many Bibles and Bible translators to be kept in check by burning them all. A new tactic was born, a tactic that English Cardinal Thomas Wolsey called learning against learning. And that tactic was to discredit the Bible in order to force people to return to accepting Rome as the ultimate authority over their body and soul. In this tactic of learning against learning, Rome would literally rewrite reality and weave a false reality matrix that we now all swim in to this day. For thousands of years, mankind understood the earth to be flat and stationary. Only rarely did men like Pythagoras attempt to claim otherwise. And it's interesting to note that many Freemasons consider Pythagoras to be one of the first of their craft. But now rewriting our reality as a tactic to discredit the Bible became a top priority in the face of Martin Luther's 1517 Reformation, Protestant Reformation. The Catholic response would be the Counter-Reformation, and it would be spearheaded by a Spanish Templar knight named Ignatius of Loyola and his followers, whom we call today the Jesuits. Their first opportunity came from the Vatican's mathematician, a Polish priest named Nicholas Copernicus. Copernicus gave birth to the modern heliocentric model of the universe with his work De Revolutionibus Orbium Celestium, on the revolutions of the heavenly spheres. Copernicus knew he was weaving a matrix of lies and wanted to hold publication of De Revolutionibus until after his death. But powerful Roman Catholic clergy like Tiedemann Gies, Bishop of Cologne, and the papal secretary himself, Johann Wiedmanstadt, forced him to publish in 1543. The facts that Catholic clergy forced Copernicus to publish, or that Copernicus was the Vatican mathematician, or that he received his doctorate in canon law from Bologna University. Canon law, the precepts by which Rome governs nations. Adam Weishaupt was a doctor in canon law. Or that he was a Roman Catholic priest. These have all been swept under the carpet. But Copernicus never married, and even the Catholic Encyclopedia had to note that in 1537, King Sigismund of Poland put Copernicus's name on the list of 4 candidates for the vacable seat of Ermland, which makes it probable that at least in later life he had entered the priesthood. Also swept under the carpet has been the timing of the publication of Davis, right on the heels of Martin Luther's Protestant Reformation. And if that's not clear enough for you, how about this? A Vatican agent named Georg Joachim Redicus, who was originally born Georg de Porus, had insinuated himself into the Luther Reformation and was in Wittenberg when he left to become a close student of Copernicus. Sources like Wikipedia claim that Redicus was sent from reformer Philip Melanchthon, a dear friend of Martin Luther, but it is absolutely Roman Catholic disinformation. In the Table Talk of Martin Luther, the great reformer is quoted as having said, "There is talk of a new astrologer who wants to prove that the earth moves and goes round instead of the sky, the sun, the moon, just as if somebody were moving in a carriage or a ship might hold that he was sitting still and at rest while the earth and the trees walked and moved. But that is how things are nowadays. When a man wishes to be clever, he must needs invent something special, and the way he does it must needs be the best. The fool wants to turn the whole art of astronomy upside down. However, as Holy Scripture tells us, so did Joshua bid the sun to stand still, and not the earth." In his lectures on the book of Genesis, Luther said, "We Christians must be different from the philosophers in the way we think about the causes of these things. And if some are beyond our comprehension, like those before us concerning the waters above the heavens, we must believe them and admit our lack of knowledge rather than either wickedly deny them or presumptuously interpret them in conformity with our own understanding." The great reformer Jean Calvin, also known as John Calvin, called Copernicus a dreamer who has a spirit of bitterness and contradiction. Reprove everything and prevent the order of nature. We will see some who are so deranged, Calvin said, not only in religion, but who in all things reveal their monstrous nature, that they will say that the sun does not move, and that it is the earth which shifts and turns. When we see such minds, we must indeed confess that the devil possesses them, and that God sets them before us as mirrors in order to keep us in his fear. So it is with all who argue out of pure malice, and that happily make a show of their imprudence. When they are told this is hot, they will reply, "No, it is plainly cold." When they are shown an object is black, they will say, "No, it is white," and vice versa. Just like the man who said that the snow is black, for although it is perceived and known all to be white, yet he clearly wished to contradict the fact. And so it is that they are madmen who try to change the natural order and even to dazzle eyes and benumb the senses. Do you think Calvin knew how the Freemasons were used by the Jesuits? When they are shown an object as black, they will say it is white.
We're talking about our government here.
No, we're talking about a crime, Bill, pure and simple. Y'all got to start thinking on a different level, like the CIA does. Now, we're through the looking glass here, people. White is black, and black is white.
Very quickly, Rome jumped upon this new model of the universe, and Jesuits like Christopher Clavius used Copernicus and his work to fabricate the Gregorian calendar, the calendar we all use. Rightly did the prophet Daniel say in chapter 7, verse 23, that during his vision, a being standing near him said, "The fourth beast shall be a fourth kingdom on the earth, which shall be different from all other kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, trample it, and break it into pieces. The 10 horns are 10 kings who shall rise from this kingdom, and another shall rise after them. He shall be different from the first ones, and shall subdue 3 kings. He shall speak pompous words against the Most High, shall persecute the saints of the Most High, and intend to change times and laws. And the saints shall be given into his hand for a time." Very quickly did Rome and papal agents like the Jesuits begin to push this new cosmology. She took over astronomy and either pushed out or killed off anyone who contradicted the idea that the Earth was a globe spinning in space and revolving around the sun. Even those that met her halfway didn't keep her happy, and she dealt with them as well. Teague Ottenson Brahe, whose nickname was Tycho, accepted the idea that the Earth was a globe spinning in space, but still believed that his own observations and data proved that the Earth was the center of the solar system and not the sun. This is known as geocentrism. Tycho wanted to follow in the steps of Martin Luther and studied at the University of Wittenberg, but was forced out by the plague. Brahe's life appeared to be frequently in danger. In 1566, he lost a large portion of his nose in a duel. He was 20 years old at the time. He later died under mysterious circumstances at the very young age of 54. One of those who claimed it was simply an illness, a bladder infection contracted during a banquet in Prague, was his understudy Johannes Kepler. Kepler was a German astronomer and supposedly a learner, yet he had an intimate relationship with Jesuits. In 1597, Archduke Franz Ferdinand II of Austria banished all Protestants, good Roman Catholic that he was, and Kepler fled to Hungary. But the Jesuits intervened and convinced Ferdinand to allow him to return. Kepler grew up with a Jesuit uncle under the same roof of their house in Wildestadt. Uncle Sidaldus was a Jesuit astrologer who also kept a wife. Upon the unexpected death of Tycho Brahe, Holy Roman Emperor Rudolf II immediately promoted Kepler to replace him as imperial mathematician, and Kepler very quickly went to work, rewriting all of Brahe's observations to be interpreted as heliocentric and not geocentric. In a paper titled Kepler's Relation to the Jesuits, Dr. Jörg Schuppner at the University of Leipzig noted that it is well known that the order of the Jesuits was the most important and the most active Catholic order in the field of science during the 17th and 18th centuries. One field of particularly intensive, successful study carried out by the Jesuits was astronomy. Many of their names are associated with the important discoveries in the history of astronomy, such as the discovery and mapping of moon craters. It is nearly impossible to list all the names of those who made serious contributions as astronomers or mathematicians. One aspect of the considerable role the Jesuits played in the history of astronomy was their support of Johannes Kepler. Some of them stood in extensive correspondence with Kepler. Now, it was obvious to protesters like Luther and Calvin that something fishy was going on in Rome, and the papacy needed plausible deniability while she rewrote our reality. That propaganda was presented by Italian astronomer and mathematician Galileo Galilei.
Okay, I'm going to take a break right now. We'll be back in 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.
The book of Revelation says, "The spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ." This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy.
Hi, Greg Anthony here from the Investigative Journal, and I've never steered you wrong before when it comes to talking about the truth regarding your political and social worlds you live in. And I don't plan on steering you wrong today when I say get involved in the hemp revolution, hemp for health and wealth. I know of some of the best hemp oils on the market. If you haven't tried them, you have to. And pay attention, they're lab tested. So contact me, Greg Anthony, at gregbeacon@gmail.com. That's Greg Beacon, G-R-E-G, like boy, E-A-C-O-N.com. And I'll hook you up with some of the best hemp products on the market. And if you want to become a sales associate and make some money selling hemp to your friends and family, do that. Contact Greg Anthony at the Investigative Journal, Greg Beacon at gmail.com, Greg Beacon at gmail.com.
The following program is labeled dangerous and off limits by the Supreme Jesuit Command. But stand tall, people. Listen up, and you may just learn something.
Oh, dear Lord Jesus, this ain't happening, man. This can't be happening, man. This isn't happening.
Okay, we're back for the second half hour of the Investigative Journal. And before we get back to the Jesuits erasing the flat earth, let's talk about some of the things going on overseas in Europe. It's a madhouse over there. Germany is saying this, ISIS beheading videos spreading like wildfire among migrants in schools. Wow. Jesuit terrorism worldwide. I remember when it was regional in Italy when I was there, but now it's spread worldwide. And guess who's behind it? Yep. The same people we're talking about. The president of Germany's Teachers Association warns that ISIS beheading videos are spreading like wildfire among Muslim migrant children in German schools. In an article entitled "Our Schools Are Out of Control," Heinz-Peter Medinger said that the situation in some schools was becoming chronic, with increasing numbers of violent attacks on teachers, creating the need for security guards at school with migrant populations of 70% and over. And he said that the attacks on teachers were primarily driven by cultural and religious attitudes held by Arab and North American teens who do not respect women. Anti-Semitic attacks on Jewish children are increasing too, as more migrant children carry knives and pepper spray. A Jewish girl was threatened with death by her classmates, and time again there are anti-Semitic attacks in Berlin, said Medinger. Asked whether the circulation of an ISIS beheading video in a school in Berlin was an isolated case, Medinger responded that such incidents were now commonplace. Unfortunately, these are no longer individual cases, he said, not even among very young students at elementary schools. Such incidents now exist at many schools in Germany. One thing is certain. Cruel, violent videos and social networks have long since arrived in student life. In chat forums like WhatsApp, movies like the described ISIS beheading video are spreading like wildfire, he said. Texas teen beaten, hot cooking oil poured on her head after refusing an arranged marriage. Now this is going on in Texas. Now parents agreed to arrange a marriage in exchange for $20,000. Parents of a high school Texas student who was reported missing in late January had abused their daughter after she refused an arranged marriage, leading her to run away from home until she was found in mid-March. Mahdi al-Ishwawi, 16, was reported missing on January 30th after she was last seen leaving Taft High School in Bexar County. She was located in mid-March when she was taken in by an organization that cared for her after she ran away. Al-Hishwawi's parents had beaten their daughter with a broomstick, poured hot cooking oil on her when she refused to marry a man in another city. Parents reportedly agreed to an arranged marriage in exchange for $20,000. So we have Islamic law right in Texas, right? Amazing. Now, there's another report. 1,000 ISIS jihadis returned to Europe. EU nationals allowed back home after fighting for ISIS. Europol has warned that more than 1,000 ISIS jihadis could return to Europe as the group is pushed out of its final strongholds. Outgoing Europol Director Rob Wainwright told the Press Association, quote, "That's one of the big intelligence questions right now about these people are. We are concerned about it because it's a large number. It could be more than 1,000. They are perhaps capable of coming back, and if they do come back, they will do so in an even more radicalized state than when they went out, given their exposure to the conflict." Now, a headmaster at a school tells mother of a daughter bullied by Muslims to cover her up with a jihad. Blonde Christian girl with German Hebrew name beaten and abused. The headmaster of a Frankfurt school told girl's mother to cover her daughter with a headscarf. The mother of the student reported that her daughter was being bullied by Muslim girls to such a degree that she had to take her out of school for protection. She was beaten and verbally attacked on the way to school, said the mother, explaining that abuse was because her daughter has blonde hair, doesn't wear a headscarf, has German Hebrew name, and is Christian. Incredible story, isn't it? Now, we'll get to more of these, but I want to get back first. I got a few more interesting headlines coming out of Europe, but I do want to get back to this video. And it's pretty good, and it gives you some history on the Jesuits erasing the flat earth.
And it's absolutely fascinating what user-edited Wikipedia says in the entry for Galileo Galilei under the subtitle Galileo, Kepler, and Theories of Tides. Cardinal Bellarmine had written in 1615 that the Copernican system could not be defended without, quote, a true physical demonstration that the sun does not circle the earth, but the earth circles the sun. Galileo considered his theory of the tides to provide that required proof of the motion of the earth. Now, there's no link on the name Cardinal Bellarmine, which is unusual for Wikipedia. Maybe that's because Cardinal Bellarmine was Robert Bellarmine of the Society of Jesus, one of the most powerful Jesuits of his time, who was canonized as saint in 1930. And named a doctor of the church. What's more, it is ludicrous to imagine that the Earth's supposed large mass doesn't pull the moon and crash into it, and instead the magical force of gravity holds it stationary. Even more ridiculous is the idea that the moon affects tides by pulling on the water. Again, the magical, mystical force of gravity is blamed. South African author Thomas Winship wrote in 1899 his book Zetetic Cosmogony. If the moon lifted up the water, it is evident that near the land the water would be drawn away, and low instead of high tide caused. Again, the velocity and path of the moon are uniform, and it follows that if she exerted any influence on the earth, that influence could only be a uniform influence. But the tides are not uniform. And Wishart uses examples from South Africa. At Port Natal, the rise and fall is about 6 feet, while at Beira, about 600 miles up the coast, the rise and fall is 26 feet. This effectually settles the matter that the moon has no influence on the tides. But Protestant reformers were on to Rome. She knew she needed a smokescreen, and she provided it. Suddenly, history was rewritten, and rather than pushing with her own agents, like Copernicus, Kepler, Galileo, and others, to rewrite our cosmology, suddenly the papacy was a defender of the flat earth. Well, just look what they did to poor Galileo. Let's do. Supposedly, Galileo was tried for heresy at the hands of that evil flat earther, Jesuit Robert Bellamy. He bravely stood by his guns and humiliated the church with a heliocentric spinning ball earth. What happened to Galileo Galilei? Well, for the last few years of his life, he was put under house arrest. Have you read anything about the Inquisition? Do you know what the Inquisition did to people when it truly considered them an enemy? Things like rotating their arms backwards until they were pulled out of their sockets, inventing special instruments that could be jammed into a person's body to rip open their bowels, putting them in a special sarcophagus filled with spikes that would chain them to the bone. You ever hear of Edgar Allan Poe? Are you familiar with his short story, The Pit and the Pendulum? About a swinging, razor-sharp pendulum that lowered across a victim and would take hours to slowly saw that victim in half. Did you know it was based upon the Inquisition? A little-known secret is that the Jesuits now own astronomy. When their missionaries went across the world, across our flat earth, the first thing they did was insinuate themselves in royal courts to become the official astronomer of that kingdom. China is a great example. One of the first Jesuits in China was Matteo Ricci. Ricci and his successors, like Adam Schall and Ferdinand Verbiest, were all the royal court astronomers, and eventually fabricated the calendar for the Chinese emperor. Today, the Jesuits even have their own observatories, both in Italy and in America. They use their puppets in the American government to steal Apache holy ground on Mount Graham in Arizona. Are they reaching out extraterrestrially or interdimensionally? They appear to have answered our question with the latest piece of technology on Mount Graham, the Large Binocular Telescope Near-Infrared Utility with Camera and Integral Field Unit for Extragalactic Research, also known as Lucifer. And it's not surprising, given the success the Jesuits have had in rewriting our reality. And we're supposed to believe that Rome was against the spinning ball earth, heliocentric cosmic accident cosmology of our modern understanding. Yet at every step of the way, Jesuits or Jesuit agents were there to bolster our false reality, hiding whenever possible behind convenient news. And for more on that, see our special report, It's the Jew, from Johnny Cerrucci and Big Bang. Needing to contrive an origin for our accidental existence that contradicts the Bible. Jesuit-trained Belgian priest Georges Lemaitre is the father of the so-called Big Bang Theory, the idea that first there was nothing and then it exploded. He was a close co-worker of just such a Jewish puppet, Albert Einstein. Einstein bolstered the Jesuit cosmology with his convoluted theory of relativity. The problem was that observations of both scientists and laymen weren't matching what so-called astronomers were telling us. And so Einstein fabricated the theory of relativity to claim that your reality was relative to the time-space continuum. It is purposefully almost impossible to understand. You're just supposed to trust science and astronomy. The Jesuits then jumped on with dinosaurs and Charles Darwin to claim the Earth is billions of years old. And wherever Darwin's theory of evolution had holes, Jesuits stepped up to fill the gap. Jesuits like Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, the father of the New Age, after fabricating the ape-like pre-humans that we supposedly came from, even students of evolution became concerned that there was a, quote, missing link between primitive apes and modern humans. A discovery was made in 1912 to bridge that gap. Having been found in Piltdown, East Sussex, England, it was named Piltdown Man. Unfortunately, it was also found to be a hoax. The skull of a small human with the altered mandible and teeth of an orangutan. Sometime later, paleontologist Stephen Jay Gould uncovered the father of that hoax, a Jesuit priest named Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. There are many such examples in archaeology and paleontology, and yet no one asks, why would so-called scientists be fabricating evidence? The goal was to discredit the Bible, and it has been resoundingly successful. Without the spinning ball Earth, Darwinian dinosaur cosmic accident, the Bible is a science textbook. With it, critics laugh and question the Bible, and instead look to human authorities to save their souls, such as the Vicar of Christ himself, who is for the first time in Roman Catholic history a Jesuit priest.
Okay, let's move on. What about Nikola Tesla? We've all heard about Tesla, and you remember Einstein was once asked, how does it feel to be the smartest man in the world? And he replied, well, I don't know. Why don't you ask Nikola Tesla? Okay, let's take a look at this presentation, what Tesla knew, and it's got some interesting lead-ins.
Wow. No, here's the difference. We can describe gravity. We can say what it does to other things. We can measure it, predict with it. But when you start asking, like, what it is, I don't know.
The flat Earth model, all of the heavenly bodies are orbiting the magnetic center of the known universe, which is fixed at our North Pole, the magnetic center. Since we live on a flat Earth, a compass needle will always be attracted to the center of the world, not the top of the globe. This attraction to the center is apparent even when in the southern hemisphere. So the heavenly celestial bodies are orbiting us, and we're stationary. This means there's some type of force causing these bodies to be weightless and orbit us. I think the ancient builders were probably aware of this principle, and it explains how they were able to build structures such as the pyramids. If you're familiar with the Coral Castle down in Florida, a single man built a castle made of extremely heavy rocks very quickly and with almost no help or machinery. He never disclosed his method, but I suspect it had something to do with this magnetic energy that causes the moon and the sun to orbit us. Indeed, I believe that Nikola Tesla was aware of this force, and so he was able to invent free wireless energy and wireless communications, but more importantly, wireless energy, well before the internet was even close to being theorized. So even newfangled zero-point energy fields, which are being researched by very fringe scientists, seems to be akin to this electromagnetic force, which is causing the celestial bodies to orbit us. Who knows? Also, the relationship with the Earth and the Moon is demonstrably of the electromagnetic variety, and certainly nothing like gravity would explain, without all the major coincidences, of course. So, if the Moon is orbiting us in response to an electromagnetic phenomena, it makes a lot of sense that one face of the Moon would be attracted to the face of our world, and that would perfectly explain that one face being ever present. Furthermore, since the Moon is a lot closer in the flat Earth model, it makes sense that its electromagnetic pull would affect the world's ocean. If you take a balloon and rub it against your hair, and then take that statically charged balloon near a tap, running tap with water, the water will bend. This proves that our tides could indeed be caused by the Moon's electromagnetic field, or possibly a static electric charge, but not a gravity field. Indeed, if the moon were close enough to pull on our oceans with its measly gravity, the much greater Earth gravity should have pulled the moon into our world a long time ago. This proves the conventional model is totally wrong and not just unlikely. And it proves there's a logically sound, verifiable alternative to the conventional accepted model. At any rate, on the flat Earth, gravity is not necessary. Gravity was a theory dreamed up to explain why we're not flung from the surface of the Earth at 1,000 miles per hour. Since our world is demonstrably not spinning, then we don't need gravity in our model. What goes up must come down is a law of physics. Gravity is a theory necessary only in the globe model. In the flat Earth model, what goes up must come down is explained sufficiently by the simple laws of density and buoyancy. Lighter, less dense objects find their way up, while heavier, denser objects find their way down. It's the natural order of things, and there's no need for gravity to explain it. If you take a beach ball filled with air, for example, and try to hold it underwater, you'll notice that it's difficult to hold it underwater, and it gets more and more difficult the deeper you get. When you let go of the ball, it will race to the surface of the water. So I suppose we should believe that the beach ball is somehow an anti-gravity device. It's beneath the water with all that pressure above it, plus all the gravity, in quotes, gravity pushing down on it. The beach ball should remain underwater according to the theory of gravity. However, it invariably races to the top because it's simply acting in accordance with the natural laws of buoyancy or density. Same thing with a hot air balloon. It's about temperature, density. The North Star Polaris is indeed a proof that the model is wrong and not just a crazy coincidence that needs to be explained in the globe model. You simply cannot argue the North Star could maintain such an alignment for any duration given our arbitrary, wobbly North Pole in your model. The North Star is simply at the very top of the celestial bodies orbiting above us and has the tightest path around the center. That's the only explanation for how it remains fixed in alignment with our North Pole forever, or for any duration whatsoever.
Einstein was once asked how it felt to be the smartest man alive, and Einstein's reply was, "I don't know. You'll have to ask Nikola Tesla." So now I'm going to go over, talk to Nikola Tesla, and see what he has to say. He tells me today's scientists have substituted mathematics for experiments. And they wander off through equation after equation and eventually build a structure which has no relation to reality. I mean, how true could that statement be? Nikola Tesla is the true genius. He says Einstein's relativity work is a magnificent mathematical garb which fascinates, dazzles, and makes people blind to the underlying errors. The theory is like a beggar clothed in purple, whom ignorant people take for a king. Its exponents are brilliant men, but they are metaphysicists rather than scientists. Oh well, thank you, Tesla, for telling us how much more can be found in Einstein's work, because you knew that way back then, so thank you for reassuring my belief system, right? So, if gravity doesn't exist, then what's the force that pulls us down to the earth? Why do things fall down instead of up? The answer is electromagnetism.
Researcher and author Anthony Patch states, quote, "In short, the accurate model of the mechanisms governing the functioning of our known universe is that of electromagnetism, not gravity. What is mistaken for and therefore labeled as gravity are in fact, and this has been thoroughly peer-reviewed, magnetic lines of force and the actions of accelerated charged particles moving at various velocities. Additionally, these same electromagnetic forces act in identical fashion, whether one is measuring actions taking place between particles at the quantum level or on a planetary scale. What has been detected by LIGO and other similar experiments preceding it are in fact magnetic lines of force and the movements and actions of accelerated charged particles, such as electrons and protons, among many others." As for black holes, supermassive, twin, or otherwise, none have been experimentally reproduced in the laboratory. None have been measured in terms of electromagnetism. None have been moved from the chalkboards of theory to factual and provable constructs nor mechanisms. Many scientists will back me up on this statement. To define what are labeled as black holes, one must look beyond the, again, theoretical labels of dark matter and dark energy, neither of which have been proven to exist, and yet are considered as constructs of black holes. Looking beyond, one finds plasma, what Tesla labeled the ether, comprising the so-called vacuum of space. This ether is electrically charged plasma. Black holes are a gathering due to magnetic attraction of this electric plasma. This is not gravity sucking in all matter and light as mainstream scientists describe black holes. Einstein's work, gravity, was hijacked for profiteering. Tesla's work, the ether and electric universe, is the real science hidden away and employed at CERN.
If you look at their mathematics of gravity, it says that the electrostatic force is 10 to the 37th stronger than the so-called gravitational force. And if you look at 10 with 37 zeros behind it, there's no human that can possibly even imagine what that looks like. I mean, it's beyond human comprehension. So these mathematicians love to throw around numbers like this, but they're essentially meaningless. But according...
Okay, so if you have no gravity, you have no globe Earth. And there you have it. Nikola Tesla knew it, and I think he's a lot smarter than a lot of us. So sometimes when you're doubting this theory, give it a chance. Look into it. It's not as crazy as you may think. Even though I will get email after email on how crazy it is to even think that. Well, if Nikola Tesla were alive today, I would have him on my show to explain it. Back tomorrow on the Investigative Journal.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.